Klagenfurt est la capitale de la Carinthie, un état du sud de l'Autriche niché dans les magnifiques contreforts des Alpes. La ville de plus de 100 000 habitants est entourée d'une multitude de sommets de plus de 1000 mètres où la neige est encore visible au mois de juin. Une journée à la plage, une sortie en bateau, un concert en plein air ou simplement un apéro sur une terrasse au soleil, voilà les activités à ne pas manquer ici. En dehors des irrésistibles attraits de la région, la rumeur circule qu'une créature terrifiante vit dans les montagnes des environs. On dit même qu'elle attaque et dévore les habitants.
The body shape is long, stretched, it's round. The head is similar to a dog.
What you also can see is that it has very small eyes and a large nose. So it was very aggressive because it couldn't see well.
It always attacks here and it jumps through the air, say, up to 15 feet or more.
With short legs and short wings and a frightening face and teeth.
It looks like a dragon. He can also fly. You have to be very careful, especially when he is hungry.
It's so poisonous that even its breath can kill.
Yeah, once it blew out fire, it destroyed our city.
So, if you are being attacked, you better run.
La créature aurait été aperçue des centaines de fois. Les témoignages varient beaucoup et les descriptions parlent tantôt d'un grand lézard, tantôt d'un serpent, d'un dragon ou d'un croisement entre ces espèces. Certains disent qu'il a 2 jambes, d'autres 4 ou encore qu'il en possède autant qu'1 000 pattes. On prétend que sa peau et sa queue ressemblent à celles d'un crocodile. Tous les enfants de Klagenfurt ont appris son histoire à l'école. Une histoire pleine de frayeurs dans laquelle d'innocentes petites filles sont attaquées. L'histoire d'un monstre appelé ici le Tatzelwurm.
I really believe that people who see strange things and strange creatures do see what they see. So people who see a strange kind of reptile or who believe they've seen a strange kind of reptile would have reported until the 1930s that they have seen a Tatzelwurm, where there were regular news reports about sightings of Tatzelwurms and where scientific magazines asked their readers to send in their sightings of Tatzelwurms for analysis for zoologists. The idea that there are large reptiles of serpentine or lizard form exists all over Europe. And you have one general term that is dragon, which comes from the Greek word draco, which means serpent. The Germanic word for that is Lindwurm, or snake, actually translated. And wherever you go in Germany or in the German-speaking parts of Europe, you have different names for dragon, and one of these is Tatzelwurm.
Le mythe des dragons cracheurs de feu domine toutes les régions alpines de l'Europe. Durant le Moyen Âge, ces croyances étaient ancrées dans la vie quotidienne des familles vivant aux limites de territoires montagneux inexplorés. Aujourd'hui, certains croient que ces vieilles histoires des Alpes autrichiennes ont un fond de vérité.
Imagine in former times, not only in the Middle Age, but also lasting until the end of the 19th century. Nature at that time was still something dangerous, something very strange, which is something against human beings. But nevertheless, people had to walk from one place to the other, wandering from one valley to the other, crossing mountains. And in such ways, lonely, wandering, I could imagine that they get in contact suddenly with such a creature.
And the most interesting case was for me, was in 1899, when an official forester in Austria reported that he had been attacked by a Tatzelwurm in a very smooth fur coat.
Le cas du Tatzelwurm est marquant. La légende raconte que la créature poilue crachait du poison. Elle aurait été abattue et ses restes auraient été analysés par des scientifiques. D'autres témoignages ont traversé les siècles, comme cette histoire d'un paysan qui a découvert un crâne en retournant la terre de son champ. Ce crâne est aujourd'hui exposé au musée régional de Klagenfurt. Se pourrait-il qu'il s'agisse d'un crâne de Tatzelwurm? Serait-il possible que ces orbites soient réellement celles de la créature qui a jadis terrorisé les habitants? Les cryptozoologues étudient les créatures qui n'ont pas encore été découvertes. Ces animaux exclus pour l'instant de la science de la zoologie. Yétis, serpents de mer, calmars géants et autres créatures étranges. Voilà ce sur quoi le cryptozoologue concentre son attention.
Since my early childhood, I have been interested in cryptozoology, which is a Greek word meaning the science of hidden animals, animals still undiscovered by zoology. And while most cryptozoologists are interested in whether these animals are real or not, or try to hunt them, I'm more interested in the sociological and folkloric implications of these reports. Well, all over Europe you find the myth that there were dragons in earlier times, and there are many terms and names for these dragons. In Germany, the dragon was often called Lindwurm, which is an old German word. Lind means serpent, and Wurm means serpent too, so it's Lindwurm actually translates as snake, snake. In the Alpine region, the Lindwurm was often called Tatzelwurm, which is one of many local names. Others are Stollenwurm, Haselwurm, Murbel, Bergstutz, or in Italy, Basilisk.
Entre les centaines de témoignages, il est difficile de déterminer lequel pourrait être le plus convaincant. En 1860, un genre d'hybride entre le Tatzelwurm et un monstre lacustre aurait été aperçu au lac Monstre, en Autriche. Plus récemment, dans les années 1980, un fermier affirme avoir aperçu un Tatzelwurm à Carleton, dans le Tyrol italien. Il l'aurait écrasé avec son tracteur. En fait, au fil des ans, une série d'apparitions aurait eu lieu dans la vallée de Lenz, également en Autriche.
Sightings of the Tatzelwurms, that is, people who actually claim to have seen a dragon-like creature in the mountains, spreads all over the Alps, from Nice in France over to Italy, around the large Italian lakes, to all over Switzerland, Austria, parts of Germany, in Bavaria. And it also goes down to Yugoslavia, where there are again local variants.
Il y a des milliers d'années, la région de Klagenfurt était un vaste marais, entouré des montagnes des Alpes. La vallée avait été complètement remodelée par les glaciers, et de grands animaux broutaient ces champs naturels. Des animaux probablement très différents de ceux que nous connaissons aujourd'hui. On pense que les humains qui se sont ensuite progressivement installés dans la région ont peut-être été en contact avec ces espèces animales, peut-être même avec le Tatzelwurm.
The people didn't live in the Klagenfurt Bassin 1,000 years ago. They lived up the hills. So in the Bassin, you could have seen the lindworm.
Generally, people tend to think that the Tatzelwurm is an animal that lives in the rocks above the tree line. But from all the stories that I have assembled, almost half of the stories refer to a Tatzelwurm near or in water. There are practically no sightings of Tatzelwurms in the forest. So generally, where people expect to see Tatzelwurms or where people see Tatzelwurms is where people would say normal lizards as well. As much as Germany became deforested and settled, the more the dragon was pushed to the geographical margins of the region, and that were the lakes on the one hand and the high mountains on the other. The most recent sightings of Tatzelwurm-like creatures have been in the area of the big Italian lakes, that is around Lake Como, Lake Garda, and Lake Maggiore, and in southern Tyrol, in the Adige Valley, and in the Veneto, which is the province of Venice in Italy, the Alpine parts of that province, and in Austria in the Enns Valley. So if someone is looking for actual living Tatzelwurms, he should concentrate his search there.
Autour de Klagenfurt, sur un territoire de plusieurs centaines de kilomètres carrés, plus de 500 témoignages d'apparitions de grands lézards ont été recensés. Mais difficile d'associer ces témoignages directement au Tatzelwurm, car la bête n'a jamais été décrite clairement. Les témoignages se mêlent au folklore, et il devient impossible de discerner ce qui relève de la superstition ou de la vérité scientifique. Cette créature rampe-t-elle encore dans les parages? L'indice le plus imposant est ce crâne géant, trouvé près de Klagenfurt.
The skull of the lindworm was found in the 14th century near Klagenfurt at St. Michael's at the Zollfeld, at the so-called dragon pit. In the 13th century, the city seal of Klagenfurt already showed a winged dragon, the lindworm.
Avec la découverte du crâne du Tatzelwurm, la légende prend de l'ampleur et devient plus troublante que jamais. Le mythe fondateur de Klagenfurt se renforce avec cet indice concret qui vient confirmer qu'une bête féroce chassait jadis dans cette région. Il n'est pas facile de trouver la trace irréfutable du Tatzelwurm. Au Moyen-Âge, on pouvait aller dans les marécages tenter sa chance. Aujourd'hui, se rendre sur les rives des lacs est une option, puisqu'il semblerait que le Tatzelwurm apprécie l'eau. Les forêts des Alpes sont un autre endroit où la bête pourrait être aperçue. La particularité du Tatzelwurm est que plusieurs témoignages l'apparentent à un énorme lézard ou à un serpent géant, ce qui explique peut-être pourquoi certains croient encore en sa possible existence.
Tatzelwurm is a German word which translates into English as a snake with legs, which generally gives you a good idea about how a Tatzelwurm is supposed to look like. People who see them have told of many different kinds, but generally it's either a large lizard, like an iguana, or a snake. And there have been reports of Tatzelwurms with no legs, so complete snakes, or only front legs, or only hind legs, or even with a row of legs like a centipede. The Tatzelwurm has often generally resembles a lizard, but with a stumpy tail, so like the tail being cut off. The skin is like that of a lizard or a newt, but there are many Tatzelwurm sightings who say the Tatzelwurm that I've seen had hair. Generally, in modern reports, which are more credibly in zoological terms, the head is said to resemble that of a newt or a snake or a lizard. But about 200 years ago, the Tatzelwurm was always, when people reported Tatzelwurms, they said it had the head of a mammal. So like mainly a cat's head, or a goat's head, or a dog's head, or even a child's head.
La légende du Tatzelwurm, qui remonte au Moyen-Âge, raconte qu'une bête féroce s'attaquait aux vaches et aux jeunes filles avant de redescendre se cacher dans les marécages impénétrables du fond de la vallée.
The story is that the lindworm lived in Klagenfurt, and the people lived outside of Klagenfurt because they were afraid of the lindworm.
And the Tatzelwurm was living in this area. So especially the women, they had a lot of fear.
When we were younger, when we heard the story, we were a little bit afraid of the lindworm.
Because when he was hungry, he has also eaten sometimes one of the nice girls.
I thought that the lindworm can bite me and eat me.
And then the men are coming from the small villages around.
And one day, the Prince of Klagenfurt built a tower where young knights could fight against the lindworm.
And one of the farmers, he had a beef, a strong beef, and they put something in his mouth, like when you go fish.
Man hat einen Stier angekettet und in diesem Stier einen Widerhaken angebracht und auf den Lindwurm hat man dann gewartet. Der Stier hat sehr laut geschrien und durch das Schreien des Stieres ist der Lindwurm angelockt worden und hat sich auf den Stier gestürzt und ihn natürlich versucht zu fressen. Und dabei hat er sich in den Widerhaken verfangen und je tiefer er sozusagen das Tier in seinen Rachen verschlingen wollte, umso stärker hat er sich in den Widerhaken hineingebissen. Kurzum, am Ende ist eben der Lindwurm auf diese Art und Weise getötet worden und die jungen Männer sind seitens des Landesfürsten auch in der Art und Weise reich beschenkt worden, dass man gesagt hat, hier wird auch die Stadt Klagenfurt gegründet.
Serait-il possible que le Tatzelwurm ne soit au fond qu'un spécimen d'une espèce éteinte qui fréquentait auparavant le territoire des Alpes autrichiennes, ou encore un descendant de cette espèce considérée éteinte et qui aurait réussi à survivre jusqu'à nos jours?
I did not only read books and newspapers and collect stuff about these monsters, but I also traveled to many areas where monsters have been seen, also where Tatzelwurms have been seen. And I spent some summer holidays in Italy, where around the Italian lakes, Tatzelwurms have been reported well until 5 years ago, and went through the mountains. But while I found old reports, I was never actually able to photograph one myself. One of the most interesting things that I've noticed is, in contrast to, say, sea serpents or lake monsters, a large percentage of the reports refer to dead animals. That is, about 60 out of 500 reports refer to the finding of a skeleton or actually the killing of a Tatzelwurm. But the most recent that I investigated was the case of a Tatzelwurm that was killed in the 1980s at Kaltern in South Tyrol, where a farmer found a Tatzelwurm that was dead, and because he had run over it on his tractor. And this was collected and later analyzed by zoologists and was found to be a Sheltopusik. That's a legless lizard that lives in the Balkans, in what was then Yugoslavia. It was very close to a railway line, so it was suspected that this Balkan lizard, which looks like a snake, very strange creature and large, did crawl on a railway wagon in the Balkans and then went out when the train stopped at St. Joseph in Kaltern and therefore was killed there.
Les Alpes ayant été abondamment cartographiées et explorées, et l'inventaire actuel des espèces vivantes qui la peuplent ne présentant toujours pas de Tatzelwurm, plusieurs hypothèses apparaissent pour tenter d'expliquer ce que les gens ont vu ou confondu avec un Tatzelwurm.
Die Geschichte des Lindwurms ist natürlich eine sehr lange Geschichte und reicht bis in das Mittelalter, bis in das sogenannte finstere Mittelalter zurück, späten 12. Jahrhundert, als uns der Lindwurm in einem Stadtsiegel zum ersten Mal begegnet, war natürlich der Volksglaube, der Aberglaube und damit auch der Glaube an diesen Lindwurm sicherlich in großen Teilen der Bevölkerung noch vorhanden, weil es auch durchaus dem damaligen Zeitgeist entsprochen hat.
Nowadays, with the tendency of many people to keep exotic animals which escape or which are released into the wild, certainly there is more chance that real animals might be behind some of the sightings. But generally, I do think that it's still a question of perception. Around the year 1800, you have 3-meter Tatzelwurms as a rule. In 1930, you have 1-foot Tatzelwurms as a rule. And I think this is a very strong confirmation of the idea that as long as the Alps as a habitat were practically untouched by man, he could imagine large creatures living there, like in foreign countries. As much as the mountains were explored by mountaineers, by tourists, the idea of a 3-meter dragon living around, say, Lake Como became incredible. So people tended to see smaller animals.
Devant le manque flagrant de faits qui prouveraient l'existence du Tatzelwurm, les sceptiques sont très nombreux. Michael Martys est le directeur du zoo alpin d'Innsbruck, une autre ville située au creux des Alpes autrichiennes, plus connue pour avoir accueilli les Jeux olympiques d'hiver de 1964 et 1976. Monsieur Martys connaît tout des animaux des Alpes et de leur comportement. Il a sa propre théorie sur les témoignages concernant le Tatzelwurm.
The name Alpenzoo is the theme we decided to show to our public. With about 150 species and more than 2,000 individuals, we display on our grounds the largest collection of the alpine fauna in the world. Well, as far as I'm a natural scientist and especially interested in animal behavior, I believe in what I see and what I know. The story of Tatzelwurm is interesting, but for me it's a myth. It's a legend, and I could imagine that we have a very basic biological counterpart to the Tatzelwurm, which is the river otter. The river otter is living mainly, as the name says, on rivers, on streams, on ponds. He's more or less nocturnal or active during the darkness. And its behavior gives me the impression that it is the realistic figure of the Tatzelwurm. The river otter is raising his body to have an overview, He's screaming if it's something scaring him. It is also hissing if it's in fear. And when swimming, it is diving. And if during the courtship behavior, a male is following the female, it gives the impression of a snake. And so altogether, this behavior of the river otter could be a very good picture for the idea of a Tatzelwurm.
Tous les témoins auraient donc, au fil des ans, été trompés par des animaux aussi communs que la loutre de rivière. Même l'esprit le plus critique peut se demander comment des centaines et des centaines de personnes ont pu confondre deux créatures aussi différentes. Pourtant,
people from rural countries, they were wandering, crossing mountains, or sometimes very isolated, alone, in the night, in the darkness. And at that time, even in the 19th century, nature was something strange, dangerous. It was something to be scared of. And river otter actually is not only living in rivers, or in water, but is also wandering from one valley to the other, so crossing mountains. It could be happen that a river otter is crossing the way of a wandering man. Well, you know, if you look at a river otter, he could bite you if he's scared, if he's in a corner and cannot escape. He will attack you. He will bite you. He will scream. So this animal, I think, shows a lot of items which are belonging to the so-called Tatzelwurm.
And the most interesting case was for me, was in 1899, when an official forester in Austria reported that he had been attacked by a Tatzelwurm in a very smooth fur coat. The Tatzelwurm had fur. And it was spitting poison at him, and he hit it and killed it. And when later scientists came to recover, it was the antler of a deer. So practically everything could be turned into a Tatzelwurm if the fear or the idea that this animal existed was believed to be real. Anything could turn into a Tatzelwurm.
on s'en doute, plusieurs cas d'observation de Tatzelwurm ont été analysés et rejetés par les scientifiques. Pourtant, plusieurs continuent de croire que cet animal a bel et bien existé au Moyen Âge, avant de disparaître. La seule piste encore valable demeure ce crâne géant, daté du XIVe siècle et exposé au musée régional de Klagenfurt.
500 years ago, each bones and skulls the people found, they thought that it is related to dragons or to mythical creatures.
So what we see here is the skull of the so-called lindworm, which is of course not a mystical creature, but it's from the Ice Age and it's a woolly rhino. So in that time when they found the creature, they thought it would be something else because they don't know about dinosaurs and fossils. But after that, in the year 1840, a paleontologist came to the city of Klagenfurt and saw the skull. And then he found out that it's the woolly rhino from the last Ice Age. So it's about 30,000 years old, maybe a little older, but we think about 30,000 years. And what you can see clearly here at the sides, and here also, that it's really of bone structure. If you break a bone today, it's the same structure. Also, when you knock at it, you can hear this is no bone anymore. This is silicified. Of course, it doesn't live on the ice shield, but it lived around at the grass areas together with the mammoths, but it was not so frequent. What you also can see is that it has very small eyes and a large nose. And because of this fact, they think the sight was bad, but the smell was good. So it was very aggressive because it couldn't see well. When the people of Klagenfurt found the skull, they saw only the upper part because the lower jaw is missing. So it looks much more like a snake than everything else. Also, it's very large and has no similarities to other animals. Nowadays, as a paleontologist and with our knowledge, we know that this is a rhino. If you're going to Africa and look at the rhinos today, they have, or Sumatra, they are very similar and they are related. So this is no question, this is a rhino and not a lindworm.
As an example as how this process might work, if you visit Loch Ness and see a large dark shadow in the waves, even if you're a skeptic, you would be thinking in terms of the Loch Ness Monster. People have preconceived ideas about what they know from the media, and in earlier centuries we have known through folklore about what to expect in terms of monsters. And there's a general tendency for monsters to be at the margin of civilization. That is, dragons were reported in Germany everywhere in the Middle Ages. Nobody had ever seen one, but it was known dragons lived there. And as much as Germany became deforested and settled, the more the dragon was pushed to the geographical margins of the region, and that were the lakes on the one hand and the high mountains on the other. And in the Alps, this idea of the dragon has been able to survive the longest.
I think the people who found the skull in the 14th century really believed the legend of the lindworm, because they didn't know that it was a skull from the Ice Age, of a mammal from the Ice Age. Well, I would say the people of Klagenfurt were disappointed about this fact at the first time. But anyway, the skull came to the 1849 founded regional Museum of Natural History, and later on to the regional Museum of Carinthia, where you can still see it.
Seule pièce à conviction, ce crâne datant du XIVe siècle a finalement été authentifié par un paléontologue au XIXe siècle. Il appartiendrait à un rhinocéros laineux qui vivait dans la région il y a 30 000 ans. Mais les habitants de Klagenfurt étant attachés à leur légende, ils continuent d'utiliser le Tatzelwurm comme emblème de la ville. L'unique témoignage accepté de tous trône en plein cœur de Klagenfurt, sur la nouvelle place.
Right now we're here in the center of the city of Klagenfurt. We have around 100,000 inhabitants, a bit less. And here we're in the main place. That's the new square, Neuer Platz in German. And behind us we can see the lindworm. That's the symbol of our city. We have all a strong connection to the lindworm right here. The lindworm, yeah, it's not so easy to define what it is. Actually, everybody says it's a dragon, but if you go further on, you will see the face is close to be the one of a lion. Then you can see the ears, it's like a bird, and at the end, the tail is like from a snake.
And it was built in the 16th century. The big statue of Hercules was added in the 17th century.
Tatsache ist, im Jahre 1593 wurde dieser Lindwurm offiziell in die Stadt gebracht und hier am heutigen Neuen Platz aufgestellt, und zwar auf Veranlassung der Stände. Meine Interpretation dieses Ereignisses ist, dass die protestantischen Stände es dem katholischen Landesherrn eben sozusagen zeigen wollten, hier ist unser Machtsymbol. 40 Jahre später etwa wird der Lindwurm dann in die heutige Position gebracht. Das heißt, auf ein Fundament gehoben, rundherum entsteht dann ein Brunnen und dann kommt als völlig neues Momentum ein Herkules dazu.
Au centre de Klagenfurt, le Tatzelwurm est incontournable. Touristes et promeneurs le côtoient quotidiennement. En plus d'héberger ce monument artistique, la nouvelle place accueille de temps à autre des festivals ou des rassemblements populaires. Une chose est sûre, tous les gens qui viennent à Klagenfurt sont magnétisés par le Tatzelwurm. Immanquablement, ils s'en approchent, l'auscultent et le photographient. Ils apprennent alors que la statue a été érigée peu après la fin du Moyen Âge et que son histoire est aussi intéressante que celle de la créature mythique.
The monument of the Lindwurm at the new place in Klagenfurt is an interesting fact. It's about 6 tons, and it shows the Lindwurm with his open mouth, and out of the mouth there comes a fountain. So this is very artistic. And when you look to the tail, at the twisted tail of the Lindwurm, this is also a sign for high mastership in sculpture. This fountain was also a practical thing. It was used for the water supply in the city. So the whole ensemble is a very characteristic sign of Roman mannerism. It's a very important work of art.
When we are little children, every class go to the Lindwurm and watch it. And we learned the story of the Lindwurm in school. And yes, I think for the citizens in Klagenfurt, it's also an important symbol because it's the symbol of our city.
So the people, they have to choose what they want to see first. But most of them, they are going first to the new square, where we have our Tatzelwurm. And then they decide, we are going for a swim, we are going in a museum, we are going shopping, or let's have a look where we can buy a souvenir with the Tatzelwurm.
So here we're in the tourist information office, and you can see a lot of products connected to the Lindwurm, to the Tatzelwurm. And you can see the brand is on the t-shirt, so if we go further, we can see the legend. It's written in a nice book, and you can see the coat of arms of Klagenfurt with the red background, the white tower. It's like a brand mark, you know? So you can go further on. It's also for kids. You have a book about the dragon. It's described as a dragon in here. Souvenirs or for little kids, it's very nice. Lindwurm to take you to your bed to sleep. And for the sportive ones, you have also a hat. Yeah, like that.
Ils sont finalement peu nombreux, ceux qui croient aujourd'hui que le Tatzelwurm a pu faire de véritables victimes dans la région. La tendance est plutôt de considérer que la bête mythique contribue à enrichir l'identité culturelle de Klagenfurt. Le Tatzelwurm est même devenu un puissant symbole de la ville.
I think it is the combination. The combination is the town, the lake, and the Tatzelwurm. I cannot say that a person is coming to Klagenfurt only to see the Tatzelwurm, and a person is coming to Klagenfurt only to go for a swim in the lake. It is the combination what Klagenfurt offers.
I work in the Hofbräu zum Lindwurm, and we have the Lindwurm in our name because it's a symbol for Klagenfurt, and our restaurant is really near the statue of the Lindwurm. Hofbräu is a restaurant chain where you can eat and drink typical Munich food. And yes, I worked in a Dirndl because it's also typical for Munich.
Le Tatzelwurm est si important à Klagenfurt que même les succursales des brasseries étrangères n'hésitent pas à placarder son nom dans leurs vitrines. Endormi tout près de là depuis des siècles, le Tatzelwurm est parfois bien malgré lui précipité hors de son sommeil pour être soumis à des duels improvisés au terme de soirées très arrosées.
So, actually, the monster can be alive. Because like some months ago, there was a very strange story. There've been some guys, maybe drunk, and yeah, what they did was that they thought the monster was alive, and so they tried to fix it. No, they climbed onto the monster, onto the tail, and the tail broke down. So we had to fix it again. It was a nightmare, more or less, for the Lindwurm and for those guys, for sure. So actually, I believe that it's death, but you know, you're never sure. And being a young girl who was like the main dish of the Lindwurm back there, you can never be so sure. And when you're swimming, having a good swim in the lake, and you're going further on, you might touch something, and you're not sure if it might be the Lindwurm. So sometimes you can be scared. Let's say it like that.
Devenu une ressource économique importante de Klagenfurt, le Tatzelwurm est utilisé à toutes les sauces. On le trouve sous forme de peluche, il donne son nom à des commerces et se laisse même déguster par les amateurs de chocolat.
Many tourists come here to see the Lindwurm because it makes Klagenfurt a little bit interesting, because they want to know the story about the Lindwurm and want to see it. When I get older and I have kids, I will tell them the story about the Lindwurm, but I don't want them to be afraid.
Ich denke, der Lindwurm ist unter den vielen sogenannten Untieren, die es in der Geschichte gegeben hat, die es auch heute noch gibt, doch etwas Einzigartiges.
The Tatzelwurm has also something special, a warm, how do you say, energy.
Well, if you really, really want to see a Tatzelwurm, then I give you the advice. First, drink a schnapps, which is very common here in the Alpine region. Then, when it's late in the night, start walking up the mountains, across some little rivers, and listen. Maybe you hear it, and I bet you will feel scared. And that's the Tatzelwurm.
Despite all my skepticism regarding the Tatzelwurm, you can never, it would be very unwise to actually 100% rule out that there is something like the Tatzelwurm. It's highly unlikely, but who knows? And even if you don't encounter a Tatzelwurm, I'm pretty certain that the scenery on the mountains of Carinthia will be well worth the visit, with or without a Tatzelwurm sighting.